Hey, everybody, welcome to the Aligned Love Podcast. This is the place where I am going to help you find the one thing that you feel is missing: healthy love. I am your host, Lauren Zoller, and in this podcast, I will share with you how to attract love, live in alignment, and elevate your deepest relationships. So buckle up, get present, tune into your body, and open up to the possibility that you truly do get to have it all. Let's dive in. All right, you all. I have a very special guest today on the podcast, and I am so excited for you to hear this interview because it's such a good one. I have Tim Ross on the show today. And Tim, in case you have never met him, is a professional podcaster, a social media influencer, a preacher, an author, a businessman. He truly has done it all. And it's his unorthodox approach to spirituality that has guided him on a constant journey of evolution and progression in his life. And this is what he speaks about. He spent years preaching and teaching for some of the most prominent ministries in the world. And in 2015, he founded Embassy Church in Irving, Texas. In 2022, he began his journey from pastor to social media influencer by merging spirituality and entertainment with the launch of his podcast, The Basement. And in 2023, just last year, he expanded into business with the launch of his own app called B-Side. He is a modern man of ministry with the ability to adjust, reach and influence people where they are, and ultimately reconcile them back to Christ through various mediums. He is the king of vulnerability. Him and his beautiful wife, Juliet, and their two sons, Nathan and Noah, live in Texas. And he is here today to talk all about how you must tap into transparency and truth and vulnerability to have any sort of a relationship that is worth fighting for, staying in, and having long-term. So without further ado, let's jump right in and chat with Tim. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm so grateful to be here with you.
I am so excited. And we were just talking about, before we hopped on, that you just celebrated a really big wedding anniversary yesterday. And we're going to talk all about it. So I'm so excited. Why don't you just share before we jump in? How many years?
25 years. May 1st, 1999. I laid eyes on Juliet in February of 1998. I was smitten by her. It was literally, for me, love at first sight. Juliet didn't know I even saw her. I didn't say hi to her, didn't approach her. February of 98 is when I laid eyes on her. April of 98, I said hello to her. May of 98, I told her I liked her. June of 98, I told her I was in love with her. July of 98, I proposed to her. May 1st of 99 is when we got married.
Oh my goodness. Such a beautiful, beautiful story. So I want to dive into that because what I want to talk about today, what I admire so much about you and why I wanted to have you on the podcast is this relationship that you have with your wife and how beautiful it is and how God-centered it is and how you both are committed to vulnerability and really sharing your hearts. So let's talk a little bit about that. But just before we do, I want you to take a moment to introduce yourself to my listeners, just in case they've never stumbled across you before, which is probably pretty impossible if they're in my world. But just talk a little bit about who you are, how you got to this space of really diving into. I know you have the B app and you have all of these things that you're doing in the world. Just tell us a little bit about your story. And then I want to talk more about this relationship with your wife and how beautiful it is.
Absolutely. So my name is Tim Ross. I was born and raised in Southern California to Charles and Maxine Ross. My daddy just died February 24th. They would have celebrated 50 years of marriage this year.
Wow.
We were supposed to all renew our vows together. Here's how vulnerability became what I call my superpower and why I'm a big proponent of it. I was sexually abused at the age of 8 by a teenage boy that lived across the street from me. Obviously sexualized at a young age, shut down, didn't share it with my parents, got exposed to pornography when I was 12. That became my numbing agent, my medicine to deal with my unresolved trauma. By the time I was 19, pornography was an addiction. Promiscuity was the way I acted out. And at 20, I gave my life to Jesus. January 14th of 1996, I gave my life to Jesus. And the year prior is when I told my parents about my abuse.
Mm.
And so when I was 19, I actually got caught by my mom looking at porn. And I know it was the strength of the Holy Spirit. I wasn't a believer yet, but I know it was the Holy Spirit convincing me, get this out now. And so I remember telling my mom, and it became a healing for the whole family that night because my younger brother was abused by the same guy. My mom was sexually harassed when she was 6 by her babysitters, and my father was abused by a comic book store owner when he was 5. So in one night, what should have been very shameful for all became this bright light being,
Mm.
shown into all of our hearts. And as a result, it felt like 2,000 pounds of concrete came off my chest, Lauren. Like I was
Yeah. Yeah.
like I could breathe deeper than I had breathed probably since I was 8. And
Yeah.
so I just remember having this thought like, I'm never going to have a secret again.
Mm.
Like I never want to be bound and gagged
Yeah.
like that again. And I didn't even have Jesus at that time. I was just like, whatever I got to do, I'm just never going to have a secret again, right? So the next year, I give my life to Jesus, and one of the first books my mom gives me, which is crazy to give like a new disciple of Jesus, she gave me Confessions by Saint Augustine. This monk who's just in love with Jesus up in the hills by himself, probably on the side of a mountain. He writes this really thick book. It's about confessions. And between confessions and then reading the Bible, because the writers of the Bible have zero chill in the
Yeah.
retelling of everybody's business, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Right.
there's no revisionist history here. Okay, we got it. And so I just thought, this is the way I'm going to live my life. And
Mhm.
for the 28 years that I've been a believer, I've been in some form of therapy or counseling for 26 of those years.
Wow.
And it has just allowed me to hone into the power of vulnerability and uh, what that does to a person from the inside out as a result.
That's so beautiful. So, so beautiful. And what I love so much about that story, and I preach about this all the time too with my clients, is that the fact that it had happened in everyone in your family, it had happened in previous generations.
That's
And
correct.
there is so much. I always say that when you speak from a place of truth and when you're truly deeply connected to transparency and vulnerability, you're not just healing yourself, you're giving previous and future generations the opportunity to heal. And that it's so amazing to just hear that in form, even from because I think that so many men are so shut down to being
Yeah.
connected to vulnerability and to being connected to that sense of transparency because they're afraid that if I tell the truth, if I speak what's on my heart, that I'm going to be rejected or people are going to think differently of me. So I just want to commend you for just saying that out loud and also tie those things together because so many things happen when you speak your truth and you really honor your voice. You're not the only one that heals.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, somebody walked up to me years ago and said, um, "Thank you for your transparency.
Mm,
You give people the gift of going second.
yeah,
Somebody has to go first,
so true. It's so
right?
true.
It's easy. It's easier to go second than it is to go first.
Mm,
And so that's why I always lead with vulnerability because it's easier to go second. And I just want to allow somebody the ease of stepping out there after I've been vulnerable.
right, right. You're giving permission.
That's
And
right.
it's hard. It's as a leader, that's a really difficult thing because sometimes it can feel so isolating to know that you have to go first. Someone
Yeah.
has to, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know if
Someone
you
has to.
experience somebody has to, which then brings me to another question. And I'm curious because in relationship, and even in the relationship with your wife, when we're talking about vulnerability and we're talking about someone going first, How does that show up in partnership, even when we're thinking about vulnerability?
Yeah.
And because oftentimes I see that in dynamics when I'm working with couples, that either both people try to go first all the time or
Mhm.
nobody goes first. And then it
Yeah.
becomes this silent fog of resentment that's
Yep.
over the relationship. So, how does that tie into what you've experienced in your relationship with your wife?
Yeah. So, in these 25 years, I learned if I could go back and have a do-over
Mm-hmm.
for the first 5 years, oh my goodness, I'd jump in a time machine in a second. And I
Wow.
just do a little back to the future thing and whisper in younger Timmy's ear, "Hey, bro, tell her everything now." I know you're scared out of your mind. Just tell her anyway. And if she
Right.
hates you, she only gonna hate you for like 2.5 weeks, right? Um, I was so as much ground as I covered in vulnerability with my parents. When I met Juliet and got married, I was so afraid of disappointing her,
Mm,
right? Like I didn't want to hurt her. And my silence actually hurt her. It
mm,
hurt us. And so I wish I would have showed up earlier in the relationship with the same vulnerability and the same authenticity. Instead, I pre populated my mind with her reactions to things
yeah.
that I hadn't even shared with.
Mm, yeah. That's really big. Well, and it's
Yeah.
uh, to me, it almost feels like it's that because I talk about this all the time too. It's that transition from the difference between a boy and a man. And oftentimes when we're working with, the wounded masculine, or we're working with what I like to call little boy energy or prince energy,
It's good.
it's that fear of wanting to step into being a king, because a king and a man who's fully embodied in who he is able to speak his truth and
That's
hold his
right.
ground and stay
That's
in
right.
that space of this is my truth, and whatever happens around you
Yeah.
is, not a reflection of what you're speaking. It's a reflection of what needs that person needs to heal. So would you say that that was, I mean, I know you would want to go back and you would want to change it all, but I think it's a
Yeah.
necessary component for men to go through to understand this is what it's like to be in that little prince energy and to rise above that to become a king.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've never heard it coined that way, phrased that way, but I actually like it. It was definitely Little Prince energy. And once I realized that that was keeping me bound and keeping me
Mm,
trapped to continue to try to show up and present in a way that wasn't true to who I really was, nor dealing with the reality of the things that I was really struggling with. Um, I stopped looking at my wife, this beautiful woman, as someone I needed to protect.
mm,
I'm like, only God can protect her. Only God can protect her heart, heal her heart. I have to show up authentically me, all of me, 100% me, because I have to give her an opportunity to love
yeah.
the real me.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
actually robbing her of the opportunity to love the real me and make a decision on if she wants to be in love with the real me
Yes.
by keeping up this false persona. And
Mm,
so she she was so gracious to me when I was able to tell her the truth of all of my brokenness, the past, and what was still present. Porn addiction was still present in our marriage. And when I stopped trying to hide that and brought that into the light, I got a partner.
mm,
I got somebody that encouraged me. I got somebody that prayed for me. I got somebody that um, checked on me. She didn't have to be my parole officer.
yeah.
um, I went and did the work. So I didn't try to use my wife as a crutch. There's too many men that use their wives as a crutch and try to make their freedom contingent on their wife's involvement. And that's not how freedom from addiction happens. It is
Right.
solely on the addict,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You need a support system, but you can't have enablers. Enablers
Exactly.
don't help you. become free. So Juliet became this beautiful part of my support system, obviously the most intimate part of my support system. And that's where my freedom from pornography came from,
Mhm.
is me bringing it into the light, bringing it into our relationship, and not making it something that could hide anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like the relationship shifted into being a relationship based in truth,
Absolutely
which is,
correct.
which to me is the only way that a relationship can thrive long
Oh,
term.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there is no way. I see everything in pictures and in images, and I liken it to being on a merry-go-round.
Yeah.
That's really soft and going up and down, but incrementally, the more lies that are told and the more secrets that are hidden, it speeds up.
Hmm.
Before you know it, you're white knuckling that little white pony,
Yeah.
and you're trying to hold on for dear life. But at some point, your grip is going to slip, and you're going to get flung off that thing.
Right.
Yeah, and who knows
Right.
where you land? You know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and another point that you brought up in that I think is really important to highlight is that when you started speaking your truth, when you don't speak your truth, you rob people of knowing the real you.
that's
And
correct.
I think it is the deepest form of faith that you can tap into, because if you truly believe that what God has in store for you and what is meant for you will never pass you, then you're actually not honoring him by not being truthful.
Mm,
And
yeah, that's good.
there's so many people too that part of this, and I warn my clients about this, when you do start speaking your truth and you step fully into vulnerability, there will be people that will leave. There are people that
Absolutely,
are not for you.
that's correct. That's
And
correct.
God didn't, they weren't meant for you. God didn't
That's
have
correct.
them for you on your path. And so
That's right.
I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit, because I think that a lot of the women that listen to this podcast, they're single, they're struggling to find a king, to find
Yeah,
a man that truly can be there and support them. And I see so often that these women, and men too, men do it as well, they put on these facades and these masks of who they think that they need to be in order for a man or a woman to get to like them and commit to
yeah,
them long term. And then it becomes an epic disaster because
that's
they've
right.
discounted themselves so much. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about that entire process, about people leaving when you honor your truth, because a lot of people don't talk about that.
It's very true. I'm going that I've gone through that in like the last, I would say, 18 to 20 months
Mm,
since becoming a podcaster. Because I stepped into a different role. Obviously, 28 years of being a believer in Jesus, 28 years of preaching. I preached my
wow.
first sermon 5 weeks after I gave my life to Jesus, right? And so here I am, this kid born and raised in LA, inner city. Older brother founded a gang. I had as much environmental trauma as I had sexual trauma. It took me years to even key in and dial in on the environmental trauma, right? Um, but I still have a love for the people that came from the environments that I came from, and I know how to speak to them directly. Well, when I transitioned from pastoring to podcasting, I decided I was no longer going to code switch. I actually felt that that was one of the instructions I received from God is, hey, I
Mm,
need you to go reach people that are in the highways, byways, bushes, and shrubs. And so I stopped code switching. When I stopped code switching, there were a lot of people that stopped um, enjoying my content, is the best way
mm,
I can say it. And there was a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of disappointment from people that were experiencing me as a podcaster that was much different than their reaction to me as a pastor, because they were shocked that the way that I sit down and talk is not the way I stand up and
yeah.
preach.
Yeah.
And I think what caused the relationships to start to separate and kind of distance was the fact that I was not going to apologize for it.
So big.
And this happens in relationships all the time, right, Lauren? It's
Yeah.
like if you've been doing, I've been married to Juliet for 25 years, and the greatest thing we did 5 years ago is that we got a divorce.
Mm.
It's the greatest divorce that you could ever have, because where the enemy tries to convince so many married couples that when there's a change of rhythm, when somebody stops doing the dance, right, that has lasted for 11, 12, 15, 20 years, that all we got irreconcilable differences, we need a divorce from each other.
Yeah.
No, you need a divorce from the version of the relationship that
Amen.
you've had,
Yeah.
right? And I
Hmm.
think if you're going to stay together for 50, 60, 70 years, you're going to have a couple of divorces.
For sure. For sure.
But it's not from each other.
Yeah.
It's from the version that no
Yes.
longer works, right? It got you here, it won't get you there.
Exactly.
It's just not going to get you there, right?
Yeah.
And so when one of the partners stops doing the dance, it freaks the other partner out.
Hmm. Hmm.
Where are you? Who are you? Where are you? Why are you? How are you? Right?
Yes. Yeah.
You start asking all the questions. And the most beautiful thing you can do is allow the person to make a decision on if they want to continue in this relationship.
Yep.
When I got married to Juliet and I went to a restaurant that we used to barely afford. Like we would have to save up and make a reservation in advance, and
Yeah.
you know eh, really know what we were going to eat on that menu. We couldn't just flippantly just,
But yeah.
I'll take
Go.
this and that, right? It was
Right.
gonna be, you're getting that, you're getting this, and then we're out. Are we having
Yeah.
dessert? No, we'll go home and eat cookies, right? Like it was, and now we just decided to go back because we can now and we can afford all of it, right? But my wife's body has changed. My body has changed. So
Mhm.
there's certain things that we used to enjoy 20 years ago that we can't get on the menu now.
Right. Right.
We just can't even enjoy that now. We would both be hospitalized if we tried to
Yeah.
have that level of nostalgia, right? We'd
Yeah.
both be
Right.
in hospital beds next to
Yeah.
each other
Yeah.
in ICU. So it's this honoring of like, hey, you're changing, and I've made a commitment to you,
Mm.
and I accept all of you in this new season.
Yeah.
I accept this new version of you, or I don't. And we have to be okay with people who go, you know what? I want to get off the ride.
Yeah.
I don't like who
Yeah.
you've become.
Yeah.
I tried it. I don't like it.
Right.
Right? I like Timmy the preacher. I don't like Timmy the podcaster.
Yep.
He makes me cringe. I don't like the way you talk. And I have to be okay with saying, that's okay.
Right.
I still love you and thank you for the memories.
Exactly.
I'm not
Yeah.
mad at you. I'm not going to make an episode talking about friends don't last. No, it's just people have decisions they have to make.
Right. Right.
And I'm open to them making decisions. But again, to your point, I'd rather them make that decision based on the truth,
Truth. Exactly.
not me trying to, well, I don't want to lose this as a friend. And they don't like when I present this way. And so I'm going to suppress me to please. No, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's what it is, why it is, how it is. And then you get to determine what it is now.
Right. Right. Well, because if you don't, then you're going to wake up 10, 15, 20 years, 5 years from now, and you're going to be in the space of, I hate my life.
That's
Who am I?
correct.
I'm a
That's
shell of a
correct.
human being.
That's right. That's
Right.
right.
And
Yeah.
it's, I just recently went through this because I was in a partnership, and I shared this on the podcast a few weeks ago, but when I was in that partnership, I had a dream one night. God gave me this vision. I was walking down the street and I saw all these people that were really close to me, my mother, my friends, clients, and they were walking right past me and they had no idea who I was. It was like they were just,
Wow.
yeah. And I remember waking up. I woke up that next day, Tim, and I said, I have to get out of this relationship because I have I haven't spoken my truth for so long that I am now not myself. I'm not
You were
me.
unrecognizable.
I was unrecognizable. And I
Oh
knew if
my
I
gosh.
kept going down that, and I had picked up my whole life. I had moved to Denver because we were ready. We were going to do this.
Yeah.
I was like, this goes against every single thing that I teach and that I help women get through. I can't do this. I have to start using my voice. And so I started using my voice, and lo and behold, the relationship crumbled. And it was so hard for me in that moment. And I learned such a beautiful lesson, what you were just speaking to. Not everybody is going to be meant for you
Yeah.
when you speak your truth and you
Yeah.
honor yourself from a place of true transparency and vulnerability.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what I learned as a result of that, I ended up coming back to Nashville. I was welcomed with open arms. The people who do fully embrace me and love all of me and know my truth, they're there and they're
That's right.
Ross. Right. And
That's
I think
right.
that that's what you're speaking to and what that
Absolutely.
whole shift that's happened too with your podcast.
Yeah.
It's just so important to remember that because it can feel scary.
Well, it is scary. But I just want to commend you on, because I know a lot of people that have that thought, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
execute it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because they're so afraid to lose whatever they think the potential
Yep.
of this relationship is. And most people, when they're that close, they literally just want to close the deal,
Yeah.
right? And they're thinking somehow, some way, miraculously, God will intervene and help them accept all of me. But I gotta let's get across the line first. I commend you for just loving you enough
Yeah.
to go, nope,
Thank you.
I'm gonna give this person an opportunity to love the true me
Yeah.
and make a decision before we make a lifetime commitment, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank
That's
you.
oh, thank you for sharing that. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thanks. Well,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that you went through this too, because there was, I'm 36. I want marriage.
Hmm.
I want babies.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
so close, right? I was
Yes,
so close. And
absolutely.
I could
Yeah.
have had those things. I could have
Right.
had them just like
Right.
you could have kept preaching and
Yep.
you could have kept doing exactly what you were doing. You would have been successful. Things would have been fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
It's true.
Okay.
It's very true. Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
if you get really honest and you listen to what God has in store with you and you have that relationship, like you really truly know how to listen to yourself and honor yourself,
Yeah.
that gets loud
Yep.
and
Yeah.
you can't unhear it. And I
That's
feel
right.
like that's probably what you were experiencing too, with knowing that you needed to make that shift from
Yeah.
preacher to podcaster.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I know the moment, the seminal moment. Obviously, I didn't know podcasting was in my future, but I
Yeah.
can tell you the moment where that seed was sown and the blossom happened. So I've been a part of a process group therapy cohort for 7 years.
Mhm.
And these are some beautiful people, men and women. There's 10 of us plus our life coach. And process group therapy is just a dynamic that I've always
Yeah.
loved. I have my um, one-on-one therapy with an EMDR therapist, but this process group therapy has just been beautiful for me. So anyway, we pay a lot of money to be in this process group therapy. Okay,
Okay.
these are some high level people. Okay, from all walks of life. You got multimillionaires in there, and pilots, and uh, professors of universities, and stay at home moms, and but very high level people. And so we're in there, and I'm for 5 of these 7 years, I've been the only Black person in the group.
Mm.
It's all white and then me, right?
Yeah.
And like LA me. Okay.
Yeah.
But I realized in probably the 4 of the 7 years, as vulnerable as we all are, because it's once a month for 8 hours. So this is not like a little 1 hour group, session. This is once a month for 8 hours. You wind up knowing everything about everybody. Lauren, I was showing up to that space, paying good money to show up in that space, and still wasn't showing up as my authentic
Mm.
self
Yeah.
because I didn't want to be misunderstood in this dynamic. And I wanted, one day something just clicked and I walked in. I told Juliet I was going to do it, but I walked in, I sat down. I said, I pay too much money to sit with you and not be authentically who I am.
So good.
I'm going to talk to y'all the way I talk at home and the way I talk to my closest friends. And if there's any misunderstanding, just be curious enough to ask,
Yeah.
why do you say that? Why do you talk like this? Why do you
Yeah.
what is your dynamic, and where is this coming from? I'll be glad to explain it, but I'm going to stop code switching. And if
Mhm.
that if that feels threatening to you, or triggers you, or you you think I'm fulfilling some type of stereotype, or whatever this brings up for you, let's have a conversation. But I pay the same money y'all pay to be in here.
Mm, so big.
and and do you know, the freedom I got in that room that day is what led to the freedom I have in my podcast now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't need a lot of people to endorse the truth
Right.
of who you are.
Yeah.
You just need the right people. And then it's
Exactly.
like, oh no, I'm way too powerful to to put myself uh on a leash,
Right.
and not show up as anything other than the full version of who I am.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a testament to that entire story is a testament to what it looks like to be committed to the work.
Yes.
Because, as I'm a somatic therapist, so I work with the language of the nervous system. And I
Oh,
think,
awesome. Thank you
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
I love therapists. I love
good.
therapists. Yeah, I love therapists.
So, well, and I love what you just said right there because, and the same thing was true for my story when I had that download from God about, okay, you are a shell. You're losing your identity in this relationship, just like you
Mm,
were losing your identity in that group session.
yeah.
There's If you haven't committed yourself to the work, there does come this moment when that feels so threatening and so fearful to have to honor that truth that you,
Hmm.
you choose to stay. You choose to
Hmm.
stay in situations. You choose to stay in, you know, relationships and in group therapy sessions and pay a lot of money where you're not your authentic self because it actually feels harder to honor it. You feel like you're going to die because you're in survival,
It's so true.
right? Then actually honor it. And
Yes.
I think that that's
Yeah.
why, to pull everything full circle, it's so important that you go to therapy. It is so important that you do the work because this is why, to be
This
able
is
to
why.
honor it. This is why.
This is why. Yeah. I tell I was talking to a friend of mine a few weeks back on our podcast, and what we were discussing was there's a lot of people, therapy's in vogue now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Again, I've been a believer in Jesus for 28 years. I've been in therapy for 26 years. So I was in therapy before it was in vogue.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Like before it, everybody was using vulnerability and transparency and
Yep.
narcissism to
Yep.
describe everything, right? They're
Yes.
like, this banana has spots on it, it's a narcissist. Right? We're just slapping labels on everything, right?
Everything. Yep.
Because so as happy as I am that there's more people that are focused on their mental health, I'm still encouraging everybody, okay, you're going to therapy, but you better do the work.
Exactly.
Like sitting in a dentist chair is not the same as getting a cavity filled.
Oh, yes. Amen.
You got to submit to the process and you got to do the work. Going to the gym doesn't mean you have a six pack.
Exactly.
It means you have the potential to have a six pack.
Right.
And all these machines can help.
Yes. Yeah. It's so true.
But you got to use them.
You got it. Yeah. Right. I know.
You got to
It's
use
funny.
them.
I feel like, and I'm sure that you've experienced this too, but people think that if they have their therapist on speed dial and they show up and they talk about their problems, but they don't ever integrate what it is that they're
Mhm.
speaking to their therapist about, it's almost like it's a get out of jail free card.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
and what you're saying is so important is that there is an absolute difference between, and coming from the somatic lens, I work with the body, which is
Yeah.
much different than talk therapy. We have to,
Correct.
talk therapy is amazing. It addresses 20% of the problem, but we've got to get into the nervous system and understand the level of healing when we're looking at survival
Yeah.
mechanisms. And
Yeah.
so many people are afraid to go there because they think, okay, well, if I show up and I just talk about my problems, but then I don't do anything post therapy, that everything's fine, and or therapy doesn't work. I've tried
Right.
therapy and it doesn't work. And it does
Right.
work
Yeah.
if you integrate it and you embody it and you actually do the work, which is what you're
That's
speaking to.
absolutely correct. And I in the last probably year, no, it's probably been a little bit more, about the last 18 months, the focus has shifted in my work to my body. And
Mm,
I've had exponential gains
yeah. Yeah.
since focusing on my body. I'm an empath. I'm attuned to my emotions.
Yep.
My therapist said, "You know how you feel, but you don't know how your body feels." And I
Ah,
was like, "Oh my
oh
gosh."
man.
And the last 18 months, the work that I've been doing and the attunement I have with my body now.
Yes.
When I tell you my nervous system is regulated in a way it has never been regulated before, like I'm so happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
But
so
I did
true.
the work. The work is
Right.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. You have to. You absolutely have
Yeah.
to. So, Tim, I could talk to you all day long. We could just jam out about so many things.
We
I do
could.
have, as we start to kind of wrap up for today, I
Okay.
do have one question that I ask every single person that comes on the podcast, and I can't wait to hear your answer to it. What does it mean to you to be in an aligned relationship? What does alignment in a relationship mean to you? And it can be in relationship to anything, your wife,
Yeah.
yourself, just
Yeah.
align.
I'll focus on Juliet. Um, alignment with my wife um starts with attunement with my wife.
Mm,
It's not even communication. It's me being attuned to her. Like it's it's the attention I pay to her as she's going throughout her day.
yeah.
The rhythm of her day informs me on how to even show up for her and show up to her. So my alignment starts with attunement. Then based on what I've attuned to, um, that's where my communication comes from.
Mm,
My communication doesn't just come like she's just had this crazy 15-hour day and I'm just like, "Hey babe, what's for dinner?"
yeah. Yeah.
Or hey babe, I can't wait to tell you about my day.
Yeah.
Based on the attunement, the conversation could start with I call her Cat. Cat is one of her nicknames.
Hmm.
Hey Cat, I know you're tired. You have to be. You're working on this website and starting this online um, initiative portal. Um, have you eaten today?
Mm,
And so I want to ease into whatever those conversations are going to be. But that alignment starts with attunement for me.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that means you have to slow down. That
Yep.
means everything can't be this fast. Right.
Right.
And even in the beauty of the mundane of a relationship, because I believe the deepest relational equity happens in the days that are the most mundane.
Yeah.
They'll wake up in the morning, kiss your spouse. What are you doing today? What are we doing with the kids? What's your day look like? When will you be home? That's where the glue of a relationship
Yeah.
really is. It's not
Yeah.
the vacation to Cabo.
Right.
Right. It's not going to
Yeah.
Spain for 3 weeks. It's hello, goodbye, right? And the
Yeah.
rhythms in between that. So, I'm sorry if this answer is too philosophical,
It's not at
but
all. It's not
yeah,
at
yeah,
all.
yeah. Like I really believe attunement, and I'm thinking tuning fork, right? I'm
Yeah.
thinking that tuning fork,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you match frequencies,
Yeah.
and when you match frequencies, that's where the alignment is, and that's where the conversations flow from.
I love it so
That's where the
much.
care flows from. That's where the touch flows from.
Yeah.
All of it flows from there for me.
From attunement. Well, and
Yeah,
not to geek out and get too sciencey, but you're able to feel that attunement because you're connected to your body,
that's right. That's
right?
right.
To come
Yeah,
full
yeah, yeah,
circle. And
yeah.
in the somatic world, we call that the resonant field. I mean, that it's your
Mm,
ability to tap into someone's nervous system when you're in their
yeah,
presence and say, okay, wait a second. How do I feel? Because how I feel is what I'm picking up from them right now. And
yeah,
how do I listen to that? And that's a language that a lot of
yeah,
people don't know how to speak. And so I think that's beautiful. That attunement
yeah.
is the way that you find and deepen into alignment because a lot of people, they don't speak that language in partnership,
Mm, mm.
which is really big.
Awesome. Well,
So
you just
yeah,
made me
great answer.
happy. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I love it so much. So Tim, what's next for you? Plug yourself for a moment. Let people know where they can find you. I know you have an app. Just
Yeah,
tell everybody how they can get in your world and consume everything that you have to offer.
absolutely. So we have Upset the Gram is my Instagram account. Um, Upset the Talk is my TikTok account for as long as the government will still let us have it. And then we have a YouTube channel called The Basement with Tim Ross. It's on iTunes and it's on Spotify as well. And we do have an app. It's called The B Side. So if you download that app, you are first to receive our content and become part of a what we refer to as a vulnerable community.
Mm,
We've given people a safe space where they can give the gift of their vulnerability.
love it. We will make
Yeah.
sure to link all of that in the show notes so that everyone can take advantage. Tim, it was so fantastic having you on the show today. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so much,
showing up and
Lauren.
sharing your heart. Yeah, and we'll have to have you on again soon. Thank you so much. And hopefully you have a
Absolutely.
great rest of your week.
Thank you. You too.
That wraps up today's episode of the Aligned Love podcast. One thing that would really help me and the other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment wherever you tune in and listen. Also, make sure to link up with me on Instagram at Lauren Zoller, and please share this podcast with anyone who you think may enjoy it. Until next episode, remember, every transformation begins with one moment of awareness. And I hope today has been yours. I'll see you next time.